Hey YouTube, Untamed here. Today I'm going to be showing you this 1958 edition Toyota Land Cruiser. So this is the all-new Prado or 250 series Land Cruiser that Toyota's are now offering here in the States. We got rid of the 200 series back in 2021. For a lot of people, that 200 series was just wildly overpriced, right? The starting point was about $86,000 for a normal Land Cruiser and up to $91,000 for the Heritage Edition with the third row. This one here, the price point is a little bit more bearable, but even so, it's a lot. It's a lot for a four-cylinder hybrid SUV at the end of the day. So in today's video, I'm going to go over the exterior, the interior, give you my top 3 likes, my top 3 dislikes. We'll talk through projected resale, well, at least what we think the resale will be for this. And then we'll wrap up the video with, do I recommend buying a brand new 1958 edition Land Cruiser if you have an opportunity to? So stick with me. Real quick shout out to Ken Garf Toyota here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for letting me check out this Land Cruiser today. I definitely appreciate it. If you're interested in a Land Cruiser, no matter the trim, they only sell at MSRP here, so you're not going to get stuck with the markup, so feel free to give them a look. All right, let's start with a walk around of the exterior. We'll kind of highlight the details as we walk around here, okay? With the 1958 edition, we do have these circular headlights, which on the standard Land Cruiser, you get the rectangular ones. The first edition will come with the circular ones as well. Personally, I am a bigger fan of the circular ones, so I think this is goodness here. A lot of hard plastic here in the front bumper, lower half anyway. We do not have the rigid industry fog lamps like we find on the first edition. But overall, I think the front end looks pretty good. They've done a good job at paying homage to the Land Cruisers of the past. Give you an idea what those fender flares look like down the side. A lot of curvature to the Land Cruiser here. Kind of wide out bowed sides on the hood there. Kind of like what we found on the 200 series, but the 200 series kind of came in further and then bowed down here in the middle, if you recall. Love that classic Heritage script for the Toyota font up front. That looks good. Looks like we do have some functional venting up front here on the sides, as well as, of course, flow through there in the front. This is a turbocharged platform. 2.4 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged platform with the iForce Max, allowing it, giving it that hybridization, right? So 326 horsepower and 465 foot-pounds of torque, which is nothing to scoff at when we're talking a four-banger at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think of these wheels. Personally, I don't like them. I think they're pretty boring, but when you look at the price point here, I do appreciate what Toyota did. They're kind of giving bare bones options here, and I appreciate that. So let's face it, most of us are going to swap those out and swap out these Geolander tires for some more all-terrain, more off-road focused tires. I like the FJ Cruiser-esque side view mirrors here. Those look good. They look nearly identical to the FJ Cruiser ones, minus that. Remember that little candlelit bulb we had on the, on the FJ Cruiser? Love that. Like the FJ Cruiser though, when you look at it, you do have a pretty straight up and down windshield. And that's just something to kind of take mental note of, because what does that do? It makes it a little bit more vulnerable to rock chips on the freeway. It's just something to keep in mind. You might be going through a few windshields on this guy on regular driving. This right here is perhaps the most important sticker on the vehicle. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact that Japan is still built out of Japan is a big deal. The Japanese take tremendous pride in building high-quality vehicles, and it shows. It shows on the 5th generation 4Runner over there, right? That's built out of Japan entirely as well, and the fit and finish on those is always exceptional in my opinion. So that is an important note to consider for. Let me get you better viewing. Important note right there. Okay, built in Japan. It's going to be built with a lot of care and exceptional quality control, which you can't always say the same for even American-built Toyotas, but definitely Mexican-built Toyotas down in Mexico. So you do have a hard plastic rear bumper out back, like we kind of found up front. Kind of just a bare bones example here altogether, and I actually really appreciate that. Land Cruiser badge right here, gloss black for the badge, but on that matte black belt line here, matte black Toyota Heritage font out back. I do wish it would have come with a split tailgate, right? A split tailgate out back is what we have always found with the with the Land Cruisers of the past. We found it with the 200 series, 100 series, 80 series, blah 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 blah. That is kind of a staple of the Land Cruiser. So I was pretty upset to see that they did get rid of that out back. So we just have the standard lift gate, not even electronic. Is a manual lift and then a manual pull down. No buttons up there to bring it down, which I appreciate that. More simplistic, just easier. very a usable space. It is detrimented a little bit with how much room is taken for the battery pack. Being the hybrid option here with the iForce Max, that's where your battery sits, underneath there, so it protrudes upward a little bit, taking some of your cargo space. We'll talk more about the interior here in a minute. A very lightweight rear hatch. There's your iForce Max badge. I like the taillights. The back end just looks good. Have a gloss black little lip spoiler out back, and kind of a wonky, I don't like this, it just seems like an afterthought. Your hitch cover there is a little ridiculous, kind of too bulky in my opinion, but otherwise it looks good out back. Give you an idea more of that body lines, the fender flares here. Unlike the 200 series and other Land Cruisers of the past, you do have that hard plastic trim pieces here around the wheel wells, which I think adds to the durability. If you're going to throw a rock up at bare metal up here or into your paint, that could maybe crack or chip the paint and then eventually maybe spread and rust out from there. Obviously it takes a lot for that to happen, but less likely and less prone anyway with the hard plastic trim. Gloss black handles, which I could do without. There's our price tag. $57,783 for this 1958 edition. Although that isn't cheap by any means, when we say the word Land Cruiser along with that price tag, though, it is cheap, right? Because Land Cruisers have always been historically really expensive. And that's why it's always kind of contributed to their poor sales figures here in the U.S. Back in 2021, when we had that 200 series, the starting price point was $86,000 some change for the base Land Cruiser. Then the Heritage Edition would jump up to $89,000 for the 2-row, or $91,000 if it had a 3rd row. So always very expensive and really out of reach for a lot of Americans. And a lot of Americans, if you know kind of thing. And a lot of Americans don't know. They look at a Land Cruiser and see the price tag. They're like, heck no, I'm not going to get that. I'm going to go get a Porsche. Or I'm going to go get a Cadillac Escalade. Because there, they kind of feel and they can see where their money is going a lot easier anyway. But $57,000 for the 1958 edition, and that there is 20 grand less than that first edition Land Cruiser. And well, that makes it a lot more bearable. The interior here is really where I think it begins to shine. This here, I really like. And you guys may beat me up on this, and I totally understand if you don't agree, honestly, but I do like this very rugged feeling cloth interior. It feels extremely durable. It just feels like it's gonna last. I can't explain it well, guys, but I don't know. It does pay homage to what we have found in, Land Cruisers of the past. Land Cruisers of the past often come with this very durable cloth interior that has aged well over the years. Like if you go find an older Land Cruiser and feel the interior, it really aged well and it didn't crack out. Whereas leather, right here, your entry points on both sides tends to crack out, right? And it tends to just, the stitching starts peeling, less likely, blah, blah, blah. I digress. Kind of a larger center console here, which is nice. The first edition had a cool box in there, kind of like what we found with the 200 series before. A lot of piano gloss black in here, especially up top here. This feels cheap and chintzy. Don't like that. I don't mind the smaller screen compared to the first edition that we had. This, I'm okay with that. Less is more oftentimes, and I do appreciate the attempt at simplicity in here. Okay, the attempt to save money, obviously, and we're actually seeing it a little bit in that price tag. A little bit more of a rubberized, more durable feeling material up top here, whereas this is more hard plastic there in the center. These look extremely cheap, but they actually feel nice to the touch. And I know it's not a good way to explain it, but when you look at that, you're like, okay, that's gonna be pretty cheap. But then you feel it, and it feels nice. Lots of hard plastic all throughout the door cards, as you'd expect perhaps. This here, although it looks like leather and it looks like a separate piece of material, it's all just hard plastic all throughout. Whereas the first edition is very soft to the touch, leather interior here, and it says first edition right there. Hard plastic door handles. You do get metal in the first edition. And just hard plastic, embezzling, or bezeling here, excuse me. And it's just, I don't know. It feels cheap for sure, but the heft of the door feels nice. you know, like, and if you're a Land Cruiser fan, you often take note of that immediately. When you open up the doors to any Land Cruiser of the past, you're like, oh wow, okay, this feels pretty durable, this feels pretty well built. So that about wraps up the exterior of this 250 series Land Cruiser here, of this 1958 edition. So let's go ahead and jump on the inside, and I'll show you a little bit more from the driver's seat. All right. Just love that. I even love the coloring and texturing of it. I love that. Very comfortable when you sit in it. I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of the steering wheel. Feels nice to the touch. Leather wrap steering wheel with black stitching here on the inside. Classic Toyota font right here for the center. I think it just looks good. It looks good. A little busy with the buttons. You know, a little bit more than what I would feel comfortable with. I would just like to have just a few buttons. But you got a lot of things going on. You got, you know, your lane keep, your cruise control, your mode selection here, your phone controls over here, which I get, as I say it out loud, perhaps it's not that bad, but it just feels a little bit busier than what I'm used to, perhaps. Your fuel door release, brightness control, your auto high beams over there. We do have the full digital gauge display here. This is our new norm. This is the new norm for us, guys. So I guess we all kind of have to get on board with that. I personally do prefer the simplicity of analog gauges. I think what we have here is an 8-inch screen, if I recall correctly, but I'm okay with that. And it doesn't protrude above the dash. Always frustrates me when vehicle manufacturers do that. They put like the tablet, like the iPad that goes up above. I don't like that. So this looks good. When it comes to the climate controls, very intuitive, very easy to use. You have more of a toggle switch design, right? And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to mess up, I give it that, but I would prefer knobs, personally. A little bit easier to do, especially like in the dead of winter. If you have gloves on, you can hop in here, just crank up the temperature real quick, crank up the fan speed, but instead you gotta kind of navigate it here and use your little fingers, and, you know, so I digress. The first edition did have a wireless charging tray right here, that Qi charging tray, whereas this one's just kind of a very, very cheap feeling plastic here. Do have a few charging ports here, C ports and whatnot, for your phone, but this here is where the rubber meets the road, or the gravel, or the asphalt, or the dirt, right? This is the off-roading bits, and this is what makes this Land Cruiser special, right? We do have the center diff here, center diff lock, and your rear diff lock, traction control, of course, your driving modes. Here, let me kind of show you. You twist this here, and you can kind of crank through your different driving modes. We got sport, normal, and eco there. Downhill ascent control, ECT there, standard stuff that we've gotten used to seeing. Here is your 4 high, 4 low. You kind of push down and they pop up and whatnot for that control. A lot of piano gloss black down here as well, but they do make, like, you know, little overlays that you can easily correct that, no problem. This is my biggest gripe when it comes to looking cheap on the inside. It's just this stuff here. I don't know, they could have done better. But at the end of the day, we're 20 grand cheaper than that first edition, and we can appreciate that a little bit, I think. Great visibility. I think they did a good job at keeping with that theme of the Land Cruisers, right? So you are in a fishbowl. And that feels good, right? And you have a commanding view of the road, which is exceptional if you are off-roading, right? And you come to expect that from Land Cruisers. Nothing is more frustrating if you're trying to clear something off-road or trying to navigate a tight trail and you can't see over your hood, you can't see out back, like you have blind spots. Nothing more is more frustrating. So I do appreciate that. All right. Kind of a decent to the touch feeling gear selection here. Yeah, it looks like you have leather on top here. Otherwise, you know, pretty, I don't know, pretty basic, right? Glove box over here, pretty standard. Do you have Land Cruiser embossed right there? Again, more hard plastic all up on top of here. Or that piano gloss black integrated within your fans as well, your vents. Okay, let's look in the back seat. I could do without the gloss black handles, but c'est la vie. So exactly what we have up front, more hard plastic out back, hard plastic handles, but man, the seats make up for it. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'm needlessly excited about that. You guys tell me if I'm a little, if you've seen this before in real life, you've touched it, felt it, sat in this, tell me if you agree and you like this. There's your backseat climate controls over here, pretty straightforward, and a few charging ports down below. It does say Land Cruiser there in the gloss black plastic. Plenty of headspace, no sunroof here in the 1958 edition, which I prefer. Gives you a little bit more headspace actually, because when you do integrate a sunroof, it does drop down a few inches. Kind of a larger fuel cap here on the driver's side. And let's look at this real quick one more time, a little bit more in detail. All right, lots of a sea of hard plastic out back, but that's to be expected, especially it being the 1958 edition, more bare bones model. Your 120 volt charging port right there. Nice. Plug in your toaster out back. You have a little C-port charging over here for your phone, as well as some cup holders out back. So I mean, in other countries you do have a third row option, whereas we do not get that here in the States. So that's kind of like remnants of what we see, because they're not going to totally change out that part of the design of the vehicle, right? And maybe perhaps in future years we'll get a third row option. We don't know yet. Some of your storage spaces over here. Yeah, pretty straightforward. A lot of venting I'm noticing all throughout it, which is, excuse me, that's not it, but a lot of venting throughout it, which is nice. Up top on both sides as well. And here is, you got a speaker out back and your manual pull down there. All right. Well, I think that about wraps up the interior and exterior walk around of the Land Cruiser here. Let's get to the point where you guys want to beat me up. Before we do that, let me show you the rat's nest under the hood. All right, so this is where a lot of people are kind of rubbed the wrong way, right? This is that 2.4 liter iForce Max. So turbocharged 4-cylinder hybridized platform. 326 horsepower, 465 foot-pounds of torque. You know, they are impressive numbers, and there's no denying that at the end of the day. But the idea of it just being kind of that hybridized 4-cylinder, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. It rubs me the wrong way, oftentimes, if I'm being honest with you. But I am hopeful that Toyota will get it right, and this will be a good platform. It does have a manual little prop rod there, so you see me kind of holding it up here. But look how busy it is. There's a lot of wires, a lot of tubage here, a lot going on just for a little four-banger. So I don't know. Give me your honest thoughts on that. Are you okay with it being a 4-cylinder, right? Especially with this particular price point, the $57,000 option here. I totally get people complaining extra hard with the $77,000 first edition, but this one here, $57,000 some change, can we put up with a four-banger? You guys tell me. All right, let's talk through my top 3 likes and my top 3 dislikes. We'll start with the good first. Number 1, first and foremost, the fact that it's built out of Japan entirely lends it a lot of style points still. I'm happy Toyota has not tossed it over to Mexico or anywhere else, because this truly is a staple for them. The Land Cruiser is a staple. This is the most legendary nameplate that they have, so I do appreciate that they have kept it in Japan entirely. So number 1, built entirely in Japan. A lot of style points there. Number 2, I appreciate Toyota's attempt to make it remotely affordable, right? So we're talking $57,000 some change. When you compare that to the first edition at $77,000 some change, you can really appreciate that. There was an attempt there to make this affordable for people. And number 3 would be the cloth interior. I do appreciate that, right? And it adds to the whole simplicity feel of the 1958 edition. They did a good job at paying homage, you know, exactly as the name entails, the 1958 edition Land Cruisers of the past, to make this a very bare bones, sparse version of the Land Cruiser. And I think Toyota should be praised for that a little bit. With that first edition though, 77 grand, no thank you. That's too much for a four-banger Land Cruiser at the end of the day. But high 50s, that's an easier pill to swallow. And now for the part where you want to beat me up, my top 3 dislikes, okay? So number 1, the power plant. I don't love that. That's no news. If you followed any of my channels before, any of my videos, I don't love the synthetic feel that we see from these hybridized iForce Max engines, right? This 4-cylinder here, I don't love it. I don't love it, and I'm hoping that maybe I'll grow to appreciate it a little bit more as time goes on. But for now, it just feels a little too synthetic, and it doesn't feel right within the legendary nameplate here. Number 2, the wheels. The wheels, I'm not a big fan of those. This is kind of a maybe a surface value complaint or gripe about it, but I do think they could have, if they're going to go cheap, they should have just went full cheap and offered like steely wheels, right? I think there would have been goodness in that. However, I don't know, they kind of tried perhaps, but I think they fell flat when it comes to these wheels, and the overall design of them doesn't look good on the 1958 edition in my opinion. But like I said earlier, to be fair, we'll likely swap those out. We'd likely swap them out for some methods and all-terrain tires likely. Number 3, this is kind of a blanket complaint, and I think maybe a lot of you would agree with me on this. The fact that this is our new Land Cruiser option here in the US is a little bit of a disappointment overall, right? I mean, this is a quote-unquote 250 series, or based on the Prado version of it, and it doesn't feel like it totally lives up to that legendary nameplate, right? And I'm nervous about that hybridized iForce Max here. I'm nervous that won't truly live up to what we have come to expect from Land Cruisers in the past, right? We've come to expect, our Land Cruisers going 500,000 or 1,000,000 miles with minimal issue and minimal headache, with minimal maintenance, right? They've been built to last 25 plus years with that in mind. That's what Toyota technicians have always done out of Japan. So the fact that it is built in Japan, I'm hopeful that Toyota will still have gotten this right, but at the end of the day, it is harder to have full confidence in a hybridized 4-cylinder engine, right? That's all it is. So I do wish we had other options. There's other options available around the world, but we just don't get it here in the US. So to me, personally, as a Land Cruiser enthusiast, as a big Land Cruiser fan, it is a little bit of a disappointment. However, that wouldn't stop me totally from considering this, if I'm being honest with you guys. I want to try to be open-minded to it a little bit, and if I am going to be open-minded to a new generation Land Cruiser, new generation Toyota, I think this is it. Built out of Japan, that really nice simplistic feel on the inside. I don't know, it's kind of in a bearable price point, right? All right, let's talk resale real quick. So obviously this is a full new redesigned Land Cruiser. Land Cruisers of the past historically have done really well when it comes to sustaining a very high residual value, and for good reason, because they have always been built to last 25 plus years with minimal issue and minimal headache with minimal maintenance. That's what Toyota technicians have always done. So because of that, they've aged very well, and that kept their resale value extremely high. Look at a Heritage Edition, a 2021 Land Cruiser Heritage Edition. Look one up right now. You'll find them with 30 to 50,000 miles for it, and they still want what they were brand new. They'll still want MSRP for them, which is high 80s, and they're still selling for that, even with that mileage 3 years later. So that is really a testament of Land Cruisers have an exceptional resale value. However, this one here is a totally new beast. Totally new beast. It's a 4-cylinder. There's a lot more question marks with this one here. I would say the first edition, although a higher price point at $77,000, will likely hold value a little bit better. It's limited to 5,000 units that were produced in the first 2 months of production. So they are a quote-unquote numbered vehicle, and numbered vehicles, no matter what, tend to age a little bit better when it comes to resale. So I think those will do okay over the next 5 to 10 years. It's just a matter of, are you willing to bite the bullet and pay such a high premium right out of the gate? And that's kind of a part of the ploy, if we're being honest with each other. Toyota knows that people like production, low production number vehicles, and they know they're willing to pay for it. So kind of a double-edged sword a little bit here. I would argue that the 1958 edition is going to be neck and neck when it comes to resale because of that lower starting price point, okay? So I mean, likely with each passing year, MSRPs, they tick upward, especially as the last few years have passed. They've always ticked upward quite a bit. Whereas, here in 2030, the year 2030, that Land Cruiser that year will likely have a starting price point of the same caliber, same trim, probably mid-60s or even higher at that point. So what I'm getting at is this having that lower starting point will allow it to kind of yield or bring back a higher resale down the road. All right, so we'll wrap up this video with, do I recommend buying one? The answer is yes. Now, I would say yes if your heart is set on a Land Cruiser. This is the one that I would truly get. Personally, I would consider getting this because of all the reasons I talked about in this video. And overall, made in Japan, it's simplicity throughout the interior and the exterior, right? There's a little bit less frills and a little bit less tech nannies within it, which I personally appreciate. And that starting price point, it is, although it's expensive still, it's an easier pill to swallow. So for me, if you're gonna get a Land Cruiser, new one here, the 1958 edition, I think scratches the itch. All right, so we'll wrap up the video there. As always, guys, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to tune into these videos. If you found any kind of value in this, I would sincerely appreciate it. Respectfully request that you like and subscribe. I'm trying to build out this Untamed Reviews channel, obviously still new, still in its infancy, but I definitely appreciate a lot of you folks coming over from Untamed Motors and checking out this one here. I'm trying to leave a little bit of my bias out of this, right, as we just kind of review various vehicles, not just Toyotas, but I'm trying to leave that little bit of the bias out as I talk through these vehicles with you guys and really get to enjoy them and share it with you. So please consider liking and subscribing. Definitely appreciate your support as always. Until next time.